I've been waiting for you. You are special. There was only one rule. Do absolutely everything she said. He wrote, she was divinely beautiful, with sublime authority. She was unquestionably the wisest, the serenest, and the most gracious soul I have ever met. She was also one of the most dangerous women to ever live. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Suddenly, my search took a very dark turn. Men, women, gay, straight, trans, black, white, Asian, drag queens, strippers. I mean, men in hot pants. No thanks. No. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Okay, thank you for your feedback on the last episode. A lot of people watched the YouTube interview that I recommended, and I mean, yeah, as Mary on Facebook put it and points out, and it's true, the interview kind of raises more questions than it actually answers. But I think I made it clear in the episode, there were so many versions of that story. Who knows what the actual truth of that event was? It's a story with so many possibilities. Also, feedback on me attempting a new ending, Peace Be With You, did not go down well. Let's just say, y'all didn't like it. So I've heard that. I've taken that feedback on board. Thank you very much. I've had to go to my merchandising headquarters and essentially burn the 2,000 new t-shirts I had printed saying "Peace Be With You," but don't worry about it. Whatever. I'm kidding. Well, okay. Let's not faff around. Let's get to the heart of why you came here. You came here for a story, and well, my. Give me an M. Give me an A. Give me a D. And what have you got? Mad. Because that's what this story is. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Now, if anywhere in the sort of 1970s or 80s, you were out walking and you saw this kind of set of people, you were an outsider, you were a stranger, you were just looking at them, you'd see a huge family. You'd see a mum and lots of kids, loads of brothers and sisters. You would probably pause for a second just to look at what they're wearing, because they're all dressed in a very, very similar way. The girls in the family are all wearing essentially the same outfit. So it's a white skirt that goes below the knee, and there's a pale blue long-sleeved blouse. It's got a collar, and it's got a sort of tie built into it that comes down the front. Kind of looks a bit like a uniform. So that's what the girls are wearing. The boys in the family, ranging from, well, about age 7 up to about 20 years old, they're wearing pale blue trousers and blue stripy t-shirts. What you might notice is how very, very, very blonde some of the kids are. Not all of them. There's a few gingers in there. There's a couple with kind of light brown hair, but mainly it's blonde. And I'm talking a blonder than Billy Idol during his Nice Day for a White Wedding. Right? It's blonder than that. We're talking white blonde. Well, the father of the family, is he here? He's not always the easiest to spot, so no, you don't see him right now. But the mother, yeah, she's there. And wow, what a figure she is. She is incredibly glamorous. And, ladies and gentlemen, very, very beautiful. A tall, blonde woman with a gorgeous face, a slim figure, what you might call a natural beauty. She's dressed in a long summer dress with flowers printed on it. She has sunglasses and a hat. So you'd be looking and you'd be thinking, wow, that's an interesting looking family. But what you'd actually be looking at is one of the world's craziest families ever. And when you look at the mother, you're looking at Anne Hamilton Byrne, one of the most dangerous women on the planet. Anne Hamilton Byrne first became attracted to Eastern religion and mysticism when she took up yoga in her mid-30s. And that was in the late 1950s. Now, this taking up of yoga, this interest in religion and mysticism, this was going to carve the path for Anne and so many others in the future. Evelyn Edwards was born east of Melbourne in 1921. Evelyn's mother was Florence. She was a Londoner. A Londoner! All right, geezers. That's my impression of you Londoners out there, so thanks very much for that. And this Londoner had settled in Australia. So Evelyn, her father was a homeless man. She never really saw him. Growing up, her mother had major mental health problems and she'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And she would eventually be committed to an asylum after she set her own hair on fire in the street and neighbours had to call the police. So this meant for the young Evelyn, she would spend her entire childhood and her teenage years in care homes and temporary families. Evelyn married at age 20 and she had a baby with her husband, but then her husband was tragically killed in a car accident and she was left to raise the baby alone. At the time her husband died, they were talking about potentially going through adoption. So Evelyn, she carried on through her 20s, working various jobs, raising her child, and then, in her early 30s, she discovered yoga. And she loved it. Sure, I get that. I am all about the yoga. Especially at the moment, I'm all about yoga in the house. Getting out my little mat, rolling out in front of the TV, putting on the guy I really like to follow on YouTube. He's brilliant, right? His name's Flo. He's a German yoga teacher on YouTube. And he starts every class by going, "Hey yogis, Thanks for joining me on the Med today and coming to practice with me. That was Flo. That was my impression of him. And I always say thanks back to the TV. I say, thanks, Flo, for your face. And then I do some yoga. Right, so anyway, she loved it. She absolutely loved it. So much that she went on to become a yoga teacher. So yoga was exploding in Australia at this point. Now we're talking sort of early 60s, and it's around this time that a lot of women started to get into yoga, and there's a real demand for teaching of it. So here's what we're going to see is the real beginning of the woman we're actually talking about, who's going to ditch the name Evelyn pretty soon and become Anne. Anne gets herself a reputation as an excellent yoga teacher. People just go, she's brilliant. She's just the best. She's fucking fantastic at it. She's such an amazing person. Now, who are these people? Who's saying that about her? Well, it's housewives, it's middle class women who have nothing else to do other than some yoga during their day, and they will rave and rave about how good she is. Now here's her skill. She's not just good at yoga. What Anne is really good at is making people feel connected to her. People feel like she is a really special soul, a wonderful human being, and people almost want to give her their secrets. They want to give her everything. They want to sort of open up to her, and that's because she was charming. She was beautiful, but let's not forget she was very, very dangerous. Now it's around this time she starts to use her charm to really break her yoga clients down. She's described as having a knack of seeing the tiniest chink in someone's armour and using it to manipulate them. I mean, I think we all know someone in life who's good at that, don't we? Well, Anne was good at it on a mega scale. I mean, she was like the queen of it. So she just really had people wrapped around her finger, and she was doing it all through this kind of yoga teaching. She would get the women that she was teaching, she would get them to unlock their innermost feelings, and in a lot of cases, a lot of these housewives who had nothing else to do except some yoga during the day in the living room, they would reveal that they were unhappy. They would reveal that they weren't the happiest of people, and they were thinking about leaving their marriage, but divorce was a really bad thing and they didn't know what to do and they felt trapped. But here was Anne, the yoga teacher, this woman who just had this power, this presence, and she was saying to them, look, come and live with me. Get away from your horrible, miserable life. Just come and live with me. She used the same tactic on gay men who at the time had to hide their gayness. And, what she would say is, look, if you and your partner feel that you need to sneak around and, live this secret life, don't. Just come, live with me. I accept you. What she was doing was she was slowly building a group. She was slowly building this group who all, in one way, felt that she had somehow saved them. She had somehow freed them from a bit of their life. Now they all lived together in her little house. All these housewives and these gay men and these people that are a bit vulnerable, a bit fragile, that she's somehow managed to pull over to thinking about living with her. So they all live in this little house. Now, another thing that starts to emerge at that time is, as well as yoga, there is a big rise in spiritualism and in enlightened thought, for everyone, not just for those who access it through religion or those who are interested in spiritualism, but it was becoming an everyman type thing. It was becoming like something we could all look at. And so here is Anne, and she jumps right on top of all of that. She's like, what's that you say, spiritualism? Sign me up. Get me involved. And what she does is she starts to use what she's learning to teach the small group of people that she's pulled into her life. And it's while she's doing this, right? It's while she's doing all of this that she goes to see a lecture, and it's being given by a man called Dr. Raynor Johnson. Alright, who's he? Well, Dr. Raynor Johnson is a really well-known psychologist, scientist, and he's doing a lecture on spiritualism. And Anne has come to the lecture, and afterwards she goes to meet him once he's finished, and he's absolutely taken aback by this woman. He's sort of instantly under her spell. Like, I don't know what it is, he just instantly kind of is like, she's this incredible being. Now, he was married, and the two of them strike up this very close friendship straight away. Whether or not that the two of them ever, Netflixed and chilled, that's that's anyone's guess. But he was crucial, absolutely crucial for Anne in this moment. And that's because he was a very brilliant man, and he was a very well-connected man, and he was now part of her group. She had recruited a Dr. Raynor Johnson, and that meant only a one thing. More like him would come. And her group would just get bigger. Let's stop calling it her group. Let's start calling it her followers. Her group of followers would just get bigger and bigger, and it did. And this is kind of, this is such these two people meeting is a real moment here in this story, because he, obviously being, this incredibly well-respected doctor of psychology and all of these things, and her with her interest in spiritualism and all that sort of stuff, when these two forces meet, what they're going to create together is horrendous. But that moment of meeting, the first step of it is that they almost increase the magnet that is around Anne for drawing people, doubles. So you've just got more people being attracted. But the kinds of people that he knows are like other doctors. They're scientists, they're lawyers, they're judges. And these people are all falling into what Anne's teachings are through her yoga, through her spiritualism. And Dr. Raynor is there. And what he actually starts doing is he starts going round to all of his colleagues and saying, you should really go and do a yoga class. And you should really go and do it with this woman called Anne, because she's fantastic. And of course they do. And of course she turns on the charm. And before you know it, these very bright people are suddenly falling under her spell, and they're also becoming one of her followers. And so that cycle, it just continues and it continues. So by this point, Raynor Johnson is starting to realise we're going to need somewhere to actually live. We're going to need a place here, because this is just getting bigger. So what he does is he buys a really big piece of land in an area called Ferny Creek, and it's in the east of Melbourne. Now, on this land, there are a couple of different sort of buildings, and he buys this sort of big home, and that's where he moves his wife to. And this at first becomes the place where the weekly meetings of Anne's group of followers will take place. So a lot of the people who were recruited to it, they lived nearby or a short sort of journey away. And they would travel as the meetings increased to 3-4 times a week. They would travel to these meetings 3-4 times a week to attend these sessions, these learning sessions on religion and on philosophy, run by Dr. Rayner and Anne. But, if truth be told, really, they were run by Anne. She was the Madonna of the outfit. Rayner was the Janet Jackson of the outfit. That's the worst fucking analogy ever, Barry. Anne was the Beyonce, Rayner the Michelle. Okay? There we go. Now, when he had this house in this land, then many of the members decided they wanted to live there. And again, Anne, she used her Anness, for want of a better way to put it, to make them want to live there. What she would do is, men who would have joined her following, if they were married, she would convince them, leave your wife. Come, join us. Come join us up the hill, they used to call it, because this piece of land sort of stretched up a hill. Come join us up the hill. Leave your marriage behind. Leave everything behind. She preyed on stressed out doctors who worked too many hours, they worked too hard. She would tell them, leave it behind. Live up here. Live up the hill. Anne's sermons, or her teachings, she had some very clear central messages for her followers, and they included these. She would tell them that aliens are going to invade the earth and they're going to cleanse the world of evil, but we are safe because we are already not evil, because we are part of this group. Okay. One of her other teachings was no one should intervene if a child is suffering, because if you do, you're interfering with God's plan. Okay, so you're just supposed to let sick children just sort of be sick, okay? She then started to tell people that she had once in her life died for a full 5 minutes, but that spiritualist powers had brought her back to life. And she would tell them that if they wanted to achieve and see miracles, you were only going to get that through her yoga practice. Sure. Okay. Excellent. I sort of stopped at this point, right, and I thought, I wonder what Dr. Rayner, who's, helped her build this group, but also bought this piece of land, got this property, and now he's housing all these meetings. I thought, I wonder what his wife thinks about Anne, or these meetings that are happening 3-4 times a week. Is she going along with it? Is she just like, why is my husband totally obsessed with this woman Anne? So as I was thinking that, I did some more research, and I discovered that he did write some diaries during the time, and he mentions his wife, and it's really kind of revealing of a lot about Anne, but a lot about actually, what they thought of her at the time. Just to let you know, in my notes, it just says the words clairvoyant fish story. So that's good. If anyone ever found that notebook, they'd be like, what the fuck is clairvoyant fish story when it's at home? Well, it's this. I'll tell you. Dr. Johnson and his wife were planning a trip to India. And before they left, Anne took them aside and she said to them, do you believe in clairvoyance? And they both said, yes, we do. Yeah, we do. And she said, good, because I am one. And they said, okay. She said, I want you to be very wary on this trip to India because I've had a vision. I've seen the future. And in the future, you, pointing to the doctor's wife, she says, are going to be very ill. You're going to be very ill because of some fish you are going to eat in India. You're going to come back to Melbourne really quickly and you'll die. So you must not eat fish when you're there. So they both take this information. I mean, they're going to India like in the next few days, and they think, okay, thank you for that information. I mean, the doctor already thinks that she's this incredible being. Now he's hearing this. The wife is like, okay, I suppose I better take that advice, even though, fine, I'm not sure you're entirely a clairvoyant, but alright, okay, we'll take it. And what happens is this. The doctor and his wife go to India, and she does indeed fall ill. Now, it's not from eating fish. She eats something else. It gives her a really bad stomach, and they do have to fly back to Melbourne quickly. And for a good 6-7 weeks, she has to be in bed because of it. Now, what does this do for Anne? Well, it only does one thing. It fully cements in the doctor's mind that she is a miracle. That we are looking at one of the most exceptional human beings to be placed on this earth. And then he takes that thinking further, and here's what he does. One night after the doctor and Anne have taken some LSD, he proclaims, while off his face on acid, she is unquestionably the wisest, the serenest, the most gracious, generous soul I have ever met. She is the second coming. She is Jesus walking this earth. Sure. Okay. Sure. I mean, people say a lot of crazy things on acid. They do. So you know. But anyway, this is what he believed. He believed that Anne was the reincarnation of Jesus on earth. Now, Anne, she's all about this. She's like, oh my God, yes. He's calling me the new Jesus. Loves this. So what happens is, Dr. Rayner just starts going about telling all who will listen in Anne's following. Not only is she this wonderful yoga teacher, is she wonderfully spiritual, she's also Jesus. And they start to believe it. People start to truly think, oh my God, we are so blessed. We are so blessed because Jesus has come back, and it's in the form of Anne. Well, the woman over there who's, I mean, I will say, very, very glamorous. She's currently wearing a pair of platform heels. Her hair's dyed blonde, and she's had a facelift. But, you know, yeah, okay. Hey, Jesus. Okay. But this message just spread. It spread further and further. So people in the group, they would go to other people in their lives and they would say, I've met Jesus. Jesus has come back in the form of Anne. You need to come and meet her. And all it did was it just helped to recruit more members to the group. And every time, it's so creepy. I hate these words. I hate saying them, actually. It's so creepy. Every fucking time a new person would come to one of the meetings, Anne would take their hands and she would say, I've been waiting for you. You are so special. Creepy. So yeah, so there's where we're at. Anne's Jesus, just to get you up to speed, in case you got distracted, in case you were doing some washing, or you know you were doing something else while you were listening. Headline is Anne is Jesus. Okay, great. Let's carry on. Now, Anne's followers, who already believed she was fabulous, but of course now that she's Jesus, decide that what they're going to do is they're going to pool their money together and they're going to buy one of the other properties on the piece of land that the doctor originally bought. And they're going to turn this into the headquarters of the group. And that's exactly what they do. They pool their money together. Now, this headquarters, well, it's massive. It's going to have to be massive because this group is growing and growing. So it's this really, really big old house, this big huge piece of property. So with a lot of work and a lot of the group getting like people to come and do cheap labour, they turn it into this insane headquarters, and they do some really ornate work, including, love this, they build Anne a throne from which she can deliver her sermons. Oh man, I want a throne. No, I don't really. Or do I? Nah. Well, so she gets this throne built for her, which, by the way, they also put a smoke machine and some blue lights around so that when she's giving her sermons, there can be mystical light surrounding Anne at all times. I mean, after all, she's the second coming. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to have her sitting on some IKEA plastic chair. Do you know what I mean? So, of course, she's going to have a throne. And so it continues like this for a while. More and more members continue to arrive. And we're up to now about 150 to 180 members of Anne's congregation. I mean, that is crazy when you think that it started from her teaching yoga in people's living rooms. It's just insane. It's now that Anne meets a boyfriend, and he was one of the members of the group. He's called Bill. Now Bill thought he was the luckiest man in the world. My God, he was dating Jesus, for God's sakes. So, Bill, by the way, I'm just going to say this right now. In the way I'm going to tell the rest of the story, I won't mention Bill a lot, but it's worth noting, Bill is always in the background. Bill is always hanging about. Yeah, he's always there. He's not a focus. He doesn't do anything that we particularly need to know about, but just know he's always there somewhere. They've been dating a few months, and Anne says to him she wants to start bringing children into the group. Well, okay, Bill agrees with this, but how they're going to do it, not sure. Is Anne planning to give birth? Does she want a baby? Is this what she wants? Well, Anne has a whole other method up her sleeve. Using the members of her group who are nurses, she goes to these nurses and she convinces them that they must help her build her family, and this is how they must do it. These nurses are to take advantage of young, scared, vulnerable girls who come in to give birth and who are alone. And what these nurses have to do is they have to administer drugs to the mother as she is in labour. And then once the baby is born, up that drug dosage until the mother falls asleep. At this point, the baby is to be taken from the hospital and delivered to Anne, where Anne will raise the child as one of her own children. Unbelievably, these nurses who follow Anne agree to do this. And maybe at this point you're thinking, but how did the doctors who were also in the room at that time allow this to happen? Well, the doctors, they were also part of Anne's group. They were in on it. Anne never left these things to chance. And so it begins. First, a couple of babies, and then more babies. And then Anne goes on a whole new tactic. She starts going through adoption agencies. Her and Bill, they begin to adopt toddlers and very, very young children. Anne and Bill have a very clear criteria when looking for kids in an adoption agency. They basically have to be young enough that they won't really remember anything before Anne and Bill have come to get them. So sort of 1-year-old, 2-year-old, maybe 3-year-olds, fine, but the younger the better. Adoption processes were not the most rigorous at the time. You're in like the sort of early 70s now. So Anne's family, it is growing, and it's really growing at a great rate. Amongst her members, Anne would go in to speak to them, and she would convince the odd male to couple up with the odd female, to have sex, get pregnant, and of course give her the baby. Now, none of these followers ever refused. Why would they? She was Jesus. She was the second coming. And if that second coming asks you to fall pregnant, then you'll do it. Each and every child that Anne raised was told the same story. She was their mother, first and foremost. Also, she was Jesus. Then she also told them that she had been born in a faraway land somewhere, and that she was also royalty, but still Jesus. I mean, it's very confusing. But the group of adults surrounding those kids, they all followed that story. They all supported Anne's story 100%. So if you were one of those babies taken from the hospital or taken from adoption, you had no option but to believe that. You were too young, this is what you were born into. You would just, be there being told this woman A was your mother, she wasn't, and she was Jesus, but also royalty and whatever, but she wasn't any of those things either. Some of the women in the group became known as the aunties. Now, it's a nice word, aunties, because you think of maybe you've had a lovely, kind aunt in your life. I would like to think so. Or just that kind of lovely image of what an aunt is. Well, these women were not that. These were Anne's minions. Her select group of women chosen to guard the children. And I use that word very carefully, guard. They were trained by Anne to never, ever let the outside world see the kids that were being raised. They were to be a secret that only her followers knew about. And as the kids came, more and more began to arrive over the years. The ones she had first brought in started to get older and older. And so by this point, she had a real age range going on. Some were now teenagers, but she still had toddlers. She had some that were like 8-9 years old. So she had this range of ages. Anne took to making sure that they all wore matching clothing. What she would do is she would get the clothing made by a local dressmaker, and she would dress them identically regardless of age. Do you remember when I was telling you that earlier on about when I was describing sort of if you'd seen them, that image of them? the girls in the knee-length white skirts with the blouses, with the collars that had a bit of a tie, looks a bit like a church uniform, not quite sure what's going on there. But yeah, regardless of whether you were 6 or 16, if you were part of Anne's family, you were wearing this. This is also, this is just horrendous. One of the things that she did to try and make them look like a family was she bleached the kids' hair. The whitest a blonde you've ever seen. Now, not all of them. I would say the majority of it. When you look at the pictures, the majority of them are bleach blonde. But she left a few with a little bit of ginger, a little bit of brown hair here and there. But this is her kind of vision for it. Her ideal picture was that they were all dressed identically and that they all had this very similar look, so that should anybody, God forbid, but should someone from the outside world see this family, they would go, okay, well, that's just clearly a large family who are all related because they all look so similar. But they didn't. Anne was just making it fucking up as she went along. So Anne, during this time, if she ever left up the hill, the headquarters, if she ever left the headquarters to go anywhere, and maybe she took 1-2 of the kids with her, sometimes she went alone or whatever, how would she explain the fact that she had all these kids so closely together? Well, she very carefully made sure that every single time she was ever going anywhere where a member of the public would see her, she was wearing a pregnancy dress with a fake bump, a sort of schmock. Is that what you call it? Schmock? Smock? I don't know. Schmack? Something like that. that type of affair. And she would just tell anyone who asked that she was pregnant again. So, for example, the woman who was making all the clothes for the kids must have been thinking, fuck, I am making a hell of a lot of outfits for all different kinds of ages. How quickly is she producing these kids? But she was just doing the old, oh, I'm pregnant again routine, which was like, well, were you not 9 months pregnant last week? How can you be 4 months pregnant again this week? Oh, that's just the way it goes. Haven't you heard? I'm Jesus, by the way. Yeah, absolute fucking screwball. So that's how Anne got around that. Now, we will get back to the children in a minute, but let's just talk about Anne as a businesswoman for a minute. You see, as you've heard thus far, Anne is no one's fool. And the sermons that she's giving, they don't come for free. The members of the group pay for the privilege of being in the mere presence of the new Jesus. And remember, I said she didn't actually pay for the headquarters that she lives in. The group, they bought it for her so that she could continue with her teachings. So what Anne does is she continues to teach her yoga around Melbourne, and she continues to work that original charm where she can influence wealthy people. And one of these is a businessman, and he owns a lot of property, and she takes advice from him. He says to her, buy property now while it's quite cheap, and in the future you will see amazing rewards from that. But don't buy Australian property. Instead, go overseas. Go elsewhere. But he says to her, if you buy now, you will see the benefits in the future. And so, this is exactly what she does. Anne buys a really large farmhouse with acres of land in England. And she buys a property in New York near the Catskill Mountains. Now, she buys these for reasonable enough rates, and she rents them out for years, making an absolute fortune out of them. Does any of that money go back into her followers? No, it doesn't. They're already paying the privilege for being there. She's not paying a penny to live in the headquarters. So for Anne, it's just income coming into her and she pays nothing out. And you see, what Anne knew, because she wasn't daft, is that cults don't tend to be poor places. If you're in a cult, so is your money. Do you know what I mean? And Anne knew this. So, yeah. So she's raking in this cash. Maybe not everyone knows that she's raking in this cash, but she really is, from these properties that she's bought. She also purchases a property in Melbourne, and it's near the beach. Now, it's 2 hours away from the headquarters, and it's a big, massive house that sits up on a hill. You can't really see it. It's surrounded by lots and lots of trees, but she buys this property. And now back to the children. Well, some of them are getting older. They're now teenagers. There's still plenty who are quite young. Now, the property I just told you about in Melbourne, that's where Anne decides she needs to take the children. All, get this, 28 of them by this point. 28 children she had somehow either stolen from hospitals, gotten through adoption, or forced members of her followers to give to her. But there was now 28 of them. And she didn't want them up at the headquarters. Instead, she wanted them in this new place 2 hours away that she'd bought. So this house, like I said, it was up in the hills. It was hidden away. It was surrounded by barbed wire fencing so that the kids would never try to escape. Anne had tunnels built underneath of the property so that should anyone from the outside world ever come to the door, the kids would be able to hide from anyone. She taught them very, very young and very severely that they had to hide. If anyone from outside of the big collection of people who followed her ever appeared at the door, they were to hide. Inside the house there was a secret room. It's weird. It's like through a cupboard. So you'd have to like go through this cupboard, pull back a bit of wall that looks like a solid wall, but it's fake. And there's a tiny room at the back of it. And if anyone came to the door, that's where all 28 of them would have to hide in that room. All 28 of the kids, the aunties would throw them into that room and make them stay there completely silent. They weren't allowed to move. They weren't allowed to make a single fucking noise whilst they dealt with, the potential stranger who might have come to the house. Now, she did have security around it, but someone could have jumped the fence. You could have found your way in. But for the kids, there was just no way out. They were in it. There was no leaving. She would tell them that if the police ever discovered that they were there, this is what police would do. They would take them. They would put them into sacks. They would hang them upside down and they would beat them. Imagine being 5 years old and that's what your mum tells you is going to happen. Fucking hell. Now, what's insane about this house that she had the 28 of them living in is that it was a 2-minute walk from a really busy public beach in Australia where thousands and thousands of people walked up and down every single day, and not one of those people who walked up and down the beach had any clue that 2 minutes away there was a house holding all these children captive. But for these kids, that was their normality. They believed their mother was Jesus. This was life. Some of the older kids, they began to have sex with each other, and a few times this resulted in pregnancies. And can you guess what Anne did with those pregnancies? Yes, she took those babies as her own, and she raised them as part of the family. Now, throughout all of this, did Anne do a lot of mothering? Did she do this because she wanted so badly to be a mother? No. No, 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 not at all. It was the aunties who did the mothering. Anne was just the disciplinarian. She was the monster they feared. The kids were terrified of Anne. It was the aunties who actually took to do with their daily needs, the things that they actually needed. It was the aunties. Essentially, Anne kept her distance except for when they needed discipline. If they really needed to be disciplined by Anne, then her weapon of choice was her stiletto heel. She would take off her stiletto and she would beat a child until they knew not to make whatever mistake they'd made again. And the aunties, they had been given some very, very clear rules on how the kids should be raised by Anne. From age 2 onwards, each child was given a very, very small dose of Valium, and it was used to sedate them every single day. Now, they grew up knowing no different. There was just always Valium in their bloodstream. That was just the way it was. Even more horrifically, when each child reached 12, Anne would tell them they're going through the enlightenment phase. Right, well, what was the enlightenment phase, or the go through as it was sometimes called? Well, it looked a bit like this. The aunties would lock them in a room. So a single child would be locked into a room. And in there, they would be given large amounts of LSD. And they were forced to stay in the room for days on the drug. They would scream, they would shout, they would beg to be let out of the room, but the aunties guarded the door and ensured that they couldn't get out. Some of the kids will say years later, some of their most vivid and clear memories of their whole experience are those days on LSD in those rooms and being force-fed the drug. The children, they were, of course, subject to Anne's teachings. She was Jesus, walking on earth, etc. And then she would tell them this story, for fuck's sake. There was an apocalypse coming, and it was only the members of this family who would survive it. Everyone else on earth, they would die. But they were being protected by her, so they would survive. Now, she told them this to make them feel safe and make them feel protected within the family, but she also repeatedly told them this: if they ever attempted to leave the family, they would die. Simple as that. The outside world did not understand them, and they would die instantly. Fuck's sake. So into her religious teachings that she was still doing, so she was still delivering religious teachings to the kids, she was still delivering it to the followers, they were still believing every bit of what she had to say. She started to mix a bit of Buddhism in there. She started saying that Buddha had joined them on earth and was now walking around them in human form. Who was Buddha? Well, no one was sure, but she knew he was somewhere within their congregation of people. And she's mixing a lot of religions. I kind of feel like what Anne's done is she's read the back of the Bible. Like, she's picked it up and she's went, oh, yeah, that looks like a good story. I like the sound of that. Great. And then she's picked up the Tipaka, the Buddhist readings, and went, well, now actually, here, that's got some quite good stuff in it. Tell you what I might do is, I might just mix the two together, and I'll just make something brand new out of it. I genuinely, I feel like that's what she's done. There's so many mixed religions in her supposed teachings. Anne's approach to religion is about as robust as my approach to cooking. My approach to cooking is recipe, you say? What's that word? No thank you. I'm not interested. I don't need one of those. No. Get out of my... Barry Henderson's kitchen doesn't need a recipe. I'll just take this bit of chicken. I'll take this bit of chocolate. Oh, I've got some lettuce. I've got some gin. And I've got a jar of jam. Now, this is going to be a fabulous meal. I'm going to make something wonderful out of this. Yeah, that's my kind of style of cooking, and I feel that's kind of how Anne approached her teachings. Of course, I'm making light of that, right? I am, but on a serious note, she was psychologically damaging these kids. She is a monster. I mean, she's an absolute monster, and as well as psychologically, physically, things were not a great deal better. Beatings were happening all the time. Kids were having their heads dunked by the aunties into cold, freezing water for up to 30 seconds at a time if they had dared to cross the line in any way by telling a small lie or speaking out of turn. Anne's main tool of cruelty was starvation. She would leave the kids hungry for days before allowing them to eat. This was a control method she used to keep them obedient. I mean, somebody please stop this woman. Well, that is coming, but not just quite yet. It's a slow start. But let's talk about how does it actually start. Anne has a daughter, Sarah, who, well, her and Sarah have a very volatile relationship. She's one of the kids who, yeah, okay, she's lived under Anne's rule for 17 years. She was one of the ones that was stolen from the hospital as a baby. But as she's reached teenage going into adulthood at 17, she starts to stand up to Anne and to the aunties, and they fight continually. She just thinks it's really unfair the way that they're treated. And after one too many fights, Anne makes, I mean, this is a huge mistake, although I'm glad at this point it happened. But a huge mistake if she wants to keep this going. She expels 17-year-old Sarah from the cult. She sends her packing from the family, and Sarah leaves. Now, can you imagine if all you've ever grown up hearing is, you can't go in to the outside world, you will die. I mean, she must have been so scared, so terrified, but also hated her life within the family, living under Anne so much that she wanted the freedom. So here she is, she's 17 and she's wandering around Melbourne, and she meets a family who very kindly take her in, and she begins to talk to them about what she's been going through. And of course at first they're like, what the fuck? What? Can this be true? Is this real? This sounds insane. But she's so insistent that, yeah, this did happen, this is the truth. And they urge her to go to the police. Now she's nervous to do this, but she agrees. And when she goes, she meets a detective named Helen D. Now we don't know Helen's surname, so she's just known as Helen D. Helen D, in hearing that a member of the family was willing to talk, well, she was straight in there. She wanted to talk to 17-year-old Sarah as soon as possible because, you see, for years, Helen D had her eye on what was happening in that house with Anne. So had plenty of other officers in the area. It's not like they didn't know something was going on. And this is how they had first come across it. A few years before, a young girl had disappeared in Melbourne, and it was a really big case at the time when it happened, and they had searched all over bits of Melbourne. They were searching parks, woods, forests, and they came across the headquarters. And they remember at the time noting it and thinking, that's odd. What are all these people doing living in this place? And it was strange, but the weird thing was there was nothing that they could really pick apart too much at that time, because Anne, you've got to remember, Anne is a charmer. Anne is good with people, so she made it all seem seemingly normal. So police couldn't really find much, and they were focused on trying to find the missing young girl. So actually what they did was they put that aside, but they never forgot about it. So there was always some eyes sort of watching comings and goings within the family home, that one in Melbourne near the beach, and the headquarters. As soon as Sarah told her story to police, there was a raid on the home where the children stayed and on the headquarters. During the raid, 13 arrests were made of the aunties and of various adults and members of Anne's group. The younger children, they were taken out and they were put into police custody and then placed into care homes. Every member of Anne's group was questioned by police. And all of this happened while Anne was overseas. She only got this news by telephone. And by the time it happened, it was too late for her to do anything. It had been ripped apart. The cult that she had created, police had come in and torn it to pieces. The aunties were sitting in front of police officers confessing to everything about the children, about the stolen babies, about the adoption, about the group, about how they lived, about what a monster Anne was. The children, they spoke too, they told their story. They said the horrific things they'd been through and the long process of trying to get them therapy and trying to find them new homes. That process began. During that raid, some of the 28 of those kids ran. They just ran as soon as there was an opportunity for freedom. And they just ran out into Australia. They just went, disappeared. What did Anne do next? Well, she went into hiding in America. Remember I said she had that house in America? Well, she went into hiding, and for 2 years, she managed to evade police entirely. Until she was found and she was brought back to Australia to face up to what she had created. Now, what police were so frustrated by, and I get this because I too am very frustrated by this, is that there was this list of things, right? There was this long list. I've just told you all this horrendous life that she created for people. The drugging the kids, the starving them, all of this. But really, it was all just stories. And that is what was incredibly difficult. Is that there wasn't actual proof for police. They had nothing physical that they could hold on to and go, that's the proof that she's done this. So time's passing, and really police have got very, very little to go on here. I mean, the kids are saying it happened, the aunties and everything, they've confessed to police this happened, but is that going to stand up in a court? Is it? No, because Anne's just going to sit there and say it never happened. These people are just making this whole thing up. And actually, can you prove that they weren't making it up? No, you can't. The little evidence that police have is some paperwork where Anne had faked her name in adoption proceedings. And all she faced for that was a fine of $5,000. That was fuck all to Anne. Having built the group from nothing and owning 4 huge properties around the world. So she's got the farm in England, she's got the house in New York, she's got the house in Melbourne, and she's got the headquarters. Anne, now in her early 70s, was worth around 100 million Australian dollars. So, $5,000 and a slap on the wrist wasn't really bothering Anne that much. For those who had survived, they felt so cheated. Like Anne should be made to go to prison for essentially leading a cult for years, but no, she was going to get off scot-free. And what happens is Anne just kind of fades away. She's out of the limelight. Of course, the story hits the news, hits the headlines. It's massive. There's photographs of her everywhere. But she just sort of disappears. Now, her disappearing is by no means the end of the story for the people involved, because then what happens is you start to get this kind of split. So you get the people who still believe she's Jesus, and they will go to their grave defending that. They will say Anne is Jesus. And then you've got those who survived, the kids. You've got them now as adults, and they say, no, we want the truth told. We want to make her pay for what she did. We want to expose her as a monster. And so for years and years and 20 years, these kids, they write their stories, and as they become adults, they tell their truth. And all the while, Anne is silent. Until 2019. Yes, just last year, Anne spoke out for the first time. Now, before I get to when Anne spoke out, where did she go in the time that she disappeared? Well, she got herself a $20 million home in Melbourne, and members of her cult, they looked after her into her later years. In 2019, aged 97, Anne gave an interview, and it was as batshit crazy as you would imagine. I'm just going to talk you through Anne's look for the interview. Now, I mean, she's 97, right? I'm not going to be too forgiving of this woman. She's still trying to be this glamorous beauty from years before. So here she is. She's in a terrible blonde wig, right? That's like sort of got long. It's got a sort of ponytail at the back. You're like, Anne, you're 97. Who's rocking a ponytail at 97, right? She's got on huge, big sunglasses and enough blusher to cover the surface of the sun, right? Now, that aside, that's what she looks like. What does she actually have to say? Well, she denies any wrongdoing towards the children. She says it's all lies. She tells the interviewer, "You don't have a good heart." She says, "I will only apologise if I feel like I've done something wrong, and I haven't." Anne, at 97, is in the later stages of dementia, and in 2019, she dies. She dies at 97 years old, and let's just go back, shall we, just for a second, to where she started. 1921, a schizophrenic mother who burnt her own hair in the street. And let's think about the absolute destruction that Anne would go on to cause. Many of the children who left that family, they were never seen again. The ones who I said that ran away just were never found by police. Who knows where they went? Who knows what they did? Many of the children who the police recovered would go on to take their own lives because they just couldn't deal with the life ahead of them, having been raised so horrifically. Some of them survived, some of them did survive, and they still fight to get their story told. I find this unbelievable, but in 2020, the original group that Anne created still exists. It has a new leader, a man called Michael, who was one of Anne's craziest followers and believed that she was Jesus and believed every word of what she said. So she's been dead for only a year, and the family of children are now all over the world, and what she has left behind is the remains of a cult. And so ends the story of Anne Hamilton Byrne. Okay, what a story. What a crazy tale. Now, at this point, if you normally switch off, hold up. Hold up for just 1 second. I want to talk to you. It's nothing major. I made that sound really serious. But I just wanted to say this. I'm going to take a short break from the podcast. Just for a month. So for the next month, there won't be any new episodes. I won't blabber on too much about the why and the who and the here and the there, but there's so many things that I want to tell. There's so many stories that I want to do, and the difficulty is they take time. The research and the process and then the re-researching and the blah blah blah. You don't need all the details, but essentially I just need a bit of time is what I need. So it means that for 4 weeks there won't be any episodes. Now, if you are a Patreon supporter, there will still be Patreon episodes, but there just won't be the main episodes. Just for 4 weeks. Don't worry about it. It's not that long. What's this now? What's the date today? It's the... let me see. Okay, 13th of April. Okay, so there won't be a new episode until the 15th of May. Now, if in that time you really do want to hear my dulcet tones, then you can head to Patreon. You can listen to those episodes. And in the meantime, please still join the Facebook group. Follow the Twitter page. Go to Instagram. Listen, I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be about. I'll still be around. It's just that I'll be working on new episodes, new material in that time. And, you know, like, in the meantime, as Mariah Carey once said, spread your wings and prepare to fly, for you have become a butterfly. Wise words, Mariah. Use that time to go and listen to other podcasts. You know, I know it's difficult, and it's a weird time because a lot of people are getting in touch with me and going, "Oh God, during isolation it's really hard, but thanks for the podcast." And I get that, and I hear that, and I know that I'm a part of some of you have a routine, and you like to listen to me at a specific time on a certain day, and maybe for a month that will just have to change. But you know, it's just the way it has to be. A massive recommendation. I'll just do this one quick one. A huge recommendation would be The Last Days of Autumn, which is a Jon Ronson podcast. Oh my God, it's incredible. I think it's about eight parts, something like that. Brilliant. It's oh my God, so good. It's about the death of a porn star. Oh my God, it's horrible. You get to learn so much about her life, her work, her boyfriend. It's brilliant. Go and listen to that. Anyway, I've given loads of recommendations over time, so go and check them all out. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I will speak to you in a month. Okay, goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one.
She would say there is an apocalypse. She would say there is an apocalypse. It's a story. Hiya. Anne would also convince some of the members of her followers. No. Anne would also convince her followers. No. Try again. Anne would also. Oh, for God's sake. Maybe not start the sentence with Anne would follow. Anne would. I've just done it again. Hiya, that's a good word. Excellent. There is. Yes. There was an apocalypse. Why can I not say the word apocalypse? And this was a control method. Hello? Control method. This was a control method. Control method. Just say method. Stop saying method. She would say there is an apocalypse. She would say there is an apocalypse.
One way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over.